Get away from him, now!
I'm performing CPR. The child has no pulse. If I stop, he dies. A dark blue sedan hit him and fled north on Carver.
I said get away from him. Stand up.
I'm Elijah Mensa, retired chief of police. My badge is in my left pocket.
A man walking home from work on a Friday evening sees a young boy lying alone in the street, crying and terrified, with a cut on his knee and no adult in sight. He stops. He sits down beside the boy on the curb. He calls 911. He uses everything he knows, and he knows more about this than almost anyone, to keep the boy calm while he waits for help to arrive. A police officer arrives. He sees a black man sitting beside a young white boy. He puts the man in handcuffs. Dr. Marcus Webb is 41 years old, licensed child psychologist with 16 years of clinical practice, contracted consultant to the City Police Department's Child Protection Unit for the past 4 years, the professional the department calls when a child has experienced trauma and needs someone who knows how to sit beside them on a curb and make them feel safe. He has counseled 47 child victims referred to him directly by the department. He knows what to say to a frightened 6-year-old because it is his profession to know. He knew it on the evening of November 14th before the officer arrived. He was demonstrating it in real time when the officer arrived. The boy was calm and holding his hand. Officer Craig Doyle is 29 years old, 3 years on the force. He has 2 prior complaints in those 3 years. Both involve black men. Both allege that Doyle made arrest determinations before gathering basic information. Both were dismissed. Aiden Cole is 6 years old. He had wandered away from his mother at a street fair 2 blocks from Maple Street, fallen and cut his knee, and been lying on the sidewalk outside the convenience store for approximately 12 minutes before Dr. Webb found him. He was crying when Dr. Webb arrived. He was calm and holding Dr. Webb's hand when Officer Doyle arrived 9 minutes later. He began crying again the moment Doyle separated them. He will ask 4 times over the next hour where the man who helped him went. Nobody will be able to tell him. Diana Cole, 34 years old, Aiden's mother, arrives at the scene at 6:31 p.m., 5 minutes after the arrest. She tells Doyle the man in handcuffs found her son and called for help. She tells him her son was alone on the street. She tells him the man did not take her son. He took nothing from her son. He gave her son back to her. Doyle proceeds with the arrest. Dr. Webb is transported to the precinct at 6:37 p.m. He will be there for 7 hours. His consultant badge, the one identifying him as a contracted employee of the Child Protection Unit of the arresting precinct, will be in his jacket pocket for all 7 of those hours. It will not be examined until the Child Protection Unit coordinator happens to walk past the holding area at 10:44 p.m. and calls Dr. Webb by name. Type 9 minutes if you understand what it means that his 911 call came in before the officer even left the precinct parking lot. This story proves that in America, a black man can find a lost child, call 911, use his professional training to keep the child calm, stay with the child for 20 minutes until help arrives, and still end up in handcuffs. Because the officer who arrived looked at the scene and decided, before asking the child a single question, that the black man holding the boy's hand was the explanation for everything wrong in front of him. Marcus Webb grew up in the East Side neighborhood of the city, the middle child of 3 raised by a single mother who worked the night shift as a hospital administrator and came home every morning having spent 8 hours managing the logistics of other people's crises. She was not a person who described what she did as sacrifice. She described it as the job. She described the job as the point. Marcus absorbed that framing before he had language for it. He was the child who noticed the other children, the one who sat beside the kid crying at recess instead of joining the group that had moved on. The one who told his mother at 11 years old that he wanted to understand why people felt what they felt and whether there was anything useful he could do with that understanding. She told him to study hard and find out. He studied hard. He completed his undergraduate degree in developmental psychology, his master's in clinical psychology, and his doctorate in child trauma and recovery at 31. He opened his private practice at 32 and joined the faculty of the city's Family Services Center at 34. At 37, the City Police Department's Child Protection Unit approached him about a consulting contract. They needed someone who could work with child victims in the immediate aftermath of traumatic incidents. Someone who could sit in a room with a frightened child and know what to say before the child had words for what had happened to them. He signed the contract. He has renewed it annually for 4 years. In that time, he has counseled 47 child victims referred directly by the department. He has testified as an expert witness in 11 cases. He has trained 14 Child Protection Unit officers in trauma-informed interview techniques. His name and photograph are on the department's contracted consultant roster, accessible to any officer with a department login in approximately 20 seconds. On the evening of November 14th, he leaves his office at 5:50 p.m. after a full Friday of client sessions and the documentation that follows them. He is walking home along his usual route, a 22-minute walk he prefers to any other form of transit because the transition between the emotional weight of his work and the quiet of his apartment requires the specific decompression that only moving through open air provides. He turns onto Maple Street at 6:12 p.m. He sees, on the sidewalk outside the convenience store on the corner, a small boy lying on his side, crying, with a bleeding cut on his left knee, and no adult within sight in either direction. He stops. He does not deliberate. He has spent 16 years training himself out of deliberation in these moments, because deliberation is the enemy of the first response that a frightened child needs. He sits down on the curb beside the boy. He says hello. He says his name. He says he is going to stay right here. He calls 911 at 6:13 p.m. He keeps his phone visible and his voice calm. He tells the dispatcher there is an injured child at the corner of Maple and 5th, that the child appears to be approximately 5 or 6 years old, that he has a laceration on his left knee, that he is conscious and responsive, and that he, Dr. Marcus Webb, licensed child psychologist, is staying with the child until help arrives. He puts the phone in his pocket. He gives the boy his full attention. By 6:20 p.m., the boy, who will tell his mother later that the man talked to him about his favorite dinosaur and made him feel like the dinosaur was right there on the curb with them, is calm. His hand is in Dr. Webb's hand. His crying has stopped. He is 6 years old, and he is on a street corner alone, with a cut on his knee and a stranger beside him. And he is calm, because the stranger beside him knows exactly how to make a frightened child feel that the world is temporarily but genuinely safe. Officer Craig Doyle arrives at 6:22 p.m. He sees a black man and a white child. Craig Doyle has been with the city police department for 3 years. He joined at 26 after completing a criminal justice degree and a brief period working mall security. His annual performance reviews describe him as decisive and self-directed, which are the words supervisors use when they mean that an officer acts quickly and does not wait for information before acting, and which are virtues in some situations and the precise description of the mechanism of harm in others. His 2 prior complaints are in his personnel file. The first was filed by a black man named Jerome Carter, who alleged that Doyle detained him for 40 minutes outside his own apartment building, having decided without speaking to him that he did not belong there. Dismissed. The second was filed by a black man named David Osei, who alleged that Doyle placed him in handcuffs during a wellness check at his own home before asking him a single question about his condition. Dismissed. Both complaints were reviewed by the same supervising sergeant. Both were characterized as reasonable responses to ambiguous situations. Neither triggered a pattern review. Neither triggered retraining. They sit in the file the way undisturbed evidence always sits, waiting for someone to look at them together. At 6:22 p.m. on November 14th, Doyle receives a dispatch call about an injured child at Maple and 5th. He arrives to find a black man seated on the curb beside a young white boy. The boy is calm. The boy is holding the man's hand. The man has both of his own hands visible and is speaking quietly to the boy. None of these observations, the calm, the held hand, the visible hands, the quiet voice, reach Doyle as information that modifies the determination he makes in the first 3 seconds of arriving at the scene. He makes the determination before he speaks. He speaks to execute it. He separates the boy from Dr. Webb. The boy begins crying immediately. The crying of a child who has just lost the specific safety of the specific person who provided it, which is a recognizable and documentable response to separation from a trusted figure that any child psychologist, and specifically this child psychologist, could have predicted to the second. Doyle does not recognize it as that. He recognizes it as distress in the presence of the subject, which is what his incident report will later describe it as, and which is the opposite of what the body camera shows. He examines the consultant badge Dr. Webb directs him to. He holds it for approximately 3 seconds. He sets it in his patrol vehicle. He applies the handcuffs. He files his incident report at 9:47 p.m. It contains 2 material false statements: that the child appeared distressed in the subject's presence, and that the subject was unable to provide a satisfactory account of his relationship to the child. The body camera contradicts both statements in the first 90 seconds of footage. The body camera was running before Doyle reached the scene. It recorded everything. He does not know when he files the report that the Child Protection Unit coordinator is going to walk past the holding area at 10:44 p.m. and call the subject by name. He does not know that the coordinator is going to pull the subject's consultant contract file and bring it to Detective Sandra Okafor, who has referred 3 child victims to the subject's office in the past 18 months, and who is going to look at the file and then look at the holding cell and experience, in the space of approximately 4 seconds, the full architecture of what has happened. He will know all of it by midnight. Aiden Cole is 6 years old. He is sitting on the curb at 6:26 p.m., which is the moment the handcuffs go on Dr. Webb, and he is crying. He is crying with the specific quality of crying that child psychologists recognize as protest crying. The crying of a child who has lost something that was making them safe and wants it back, as opposed to the fear crying he was doing when Dr. Webb found him 14 minutes ago. These are not the same sound. They are not the same physiological state. Any trained observer can tell them apart. Officer Doyle does not tell them apart because he is not looking for the distinction. He is looking for confirmation of the determination he has already made, and a crying child in the presence of a black man is, in the processing that produced that determination, confirmation enough. Dr. Webb looks back at Aiden as he has walked to the patrol vehicle. He asks, for the second time, that someone stay with the boy. A female officer, arriving as backup, takes Aiden's hand. Aiden looks at her. He asks where the man went. She tells him the man had to go with the other officer. Aiden asks why. She does not have an answer he can use. Diana Cole arrives at 6:31 p.m., 5 minutes after the arrest. She has been searching the street fair 2 blocks away for 40 minutes. She sees her son on the curb with the backup officer, and she crosses the street at a run, and she holds him for approximately 30 seconds before she stands up and looks at the patrol vehicle where Dr. Webb is sitting in the back seat. She asks the backup officer what happened. The backup officer tells her a man was found with her son. She says, "The man found my son." She says, "My son was alone." She says, "That man did not take him." She walks to the patrol vehicle. She knocks on the window. She tells Doyle through the glass that the man in his back seat found her son and called for help and stayed with him. She says, "He saved my son. Let him out." Doyle drives to the precinct. Aiden asks 4 more times over the following hour, twice on the curb, once in the ambulance that takes him to the hospital for his knee, once in the hospital waiting room, where the man went. His mother tells him she is working on it. She does not know yet how long working on it is going to take. Dr. Marcus Webb is processed at the precinct at 7:15 p.m. His jacket, containing, in the left inside pocket, his Child Protection Unit consultant badge with his name, photograph, and the City Police Department seal, is placed in the property bag with his wallet and his phone. He asks the processing officer, twice, whether anyone has pulled his consultant contract from the department database. He is told the investigation is ongoing. He asks whether anyone has contacted the Child Protection Unit. He is told the investigation is ongoing. He asks whether Diana Cole's statement, The statement of the boy's mother confirming that he found the boy and called 911 has been incorporated into the investigation. He is told the investigation is ongoing. He is placed in a holding cell at 7:22 p.m. He calls his sister Diane at 7:45 p.m. He tells her what happened in the specific and sequential way of a man who has spent 16 years helping other people find language for experiences that resist it, and who therefore has himself a precise relationship with language even in situations that resist it. He tells her to call James Whitfield, the Child Protection Unit coordinator, whose number he gives her from memory. She calls attorney Renee Caldwell at 8:30 p.m. Caldwell is at the precinct by 9:45 p.m. Caldwell reviews the incident report. She requests the body camera footage. She is told it is under review. She requests the 911 call log. She obtains it through an emergency records request. She places the log on the desk in front of the duty sergeant. She points to the timestamp, 6:13 p.m. She points to the dispatch record showing Doyle leaving the precinct at 6:20 p.m. She asks the duty sergeant to explain how a man who kidnapped a child could have called 911 about that child 7 minutes before the responding officer left the building. The duty sergeant does not have an answer. She files an emergency release motion at 10:15 p.m. It is denied. James Whitfield walks past the holding area at 10:44 p.m. He is at the precinct for an unrelated matter, a child victim interview scheduled for the following morning that he has come to prepare documentation for. He walks past the holding cells on his way to the elevator. He looks through the glass. He stops. He looks again. He goes to the desk sergeant. He says, "The man in holding cell 3 is Marcus Webb." He says, "Marcus Webb is a contracted consultant to my unit." He says, "Why is Marcus Webb in a holding cell?" Detective Sandra Okafor pulls Dr. Webb's file at 10:51 p.m. She has his consultant contract on her screen in 20 seconds. She has referred 3 children to his office in the past 18 months. She looks at his photograph on the contract. She looks at the holding cell. She picks up the phone. Dr. Marcus Webb is released at 11:09 p.m. He has been in custody for 4 hours and 32 minutes from transport. 7 hours from the moment of the arrest on Maple Street. His jacket is returned to him at the property desk. He puts it on. He reaches into the left inside pocket. The consultant badge is there. It has been there the entire time. Diana Cole spends the 7 hours of Dr. Webb's detention doing 4 things simultaneously. Caring for Aiden, whose knee requires 3 stitches at the hospital and who asks twice more in the emergency room where the man went. Calling the precinct every 45 minutes to ask about the status of the man who found her son. Preparing a written statement that she delivers to the precinct desk at 9 p.m. and asks to be attached immediately to the investigation file. And composing in the notes. Application on her phone. The account she is going to give to every person who will listen to her until the man who saved her son is out of a holding cell and the officer who put him there has answered for it. She is 34 years old. She is a high school English teacher. She is not a lawyer, and she is not a public figure, and she does not have a platform. What she has is a 6-year-old son who is alive and stitched and calm because a stranger sat down beside him on a curb on a Friday evening and knew exactly what to do. And she intends to make sure that the record of what that stranger did is complete and permanent and impossible to dismiss. She will testify at the civil trial on day 2. She will be on the stand for 55 minutes. She will be the first witness. She will be the witness the jury remembers longest. Dr. Webb does not go home when he is released. He goes to Caldwell's office, which she has opened at 11:30 p.m. because she has been in contact with Diane Webb for 3 hours and understands that the case requires immediate documentation while every detail is still precise. He sits across from Caldwell and provides a complete account of everything from the moment he turned on the Maple Street at 6:12 p.m. to the moment the property desk returned his jacket at 11:14 p.m. He is specific about every exchange, every timestamp, every request he made that was characterized as the investigation is ongoing. and every moment in which the badge in his pocket was available to be examined and was not. When he is finished, Caldwell asks him what he wants from the lawsuit. He thinks for a moment. Then he says, "I want 3 things." He wants the incident report corrected in the permanent record, because the 2 false statements in it, that Aiden was distressed in his presence and that he was unable to provide a satisfactory account, are the opposite of what happened, and they cannot be allowed to stand as the documented version of what happened on Maple Street. He wants the 2 prior complaints against Doyle reopened and properly investigated, because Jerome Carter and David Osai deserve that investigation before November 14th, and the fact that they did not receive it is part of why he spent 7 hours in a holding cell. And he wants, from whatever institutional damages are awarded, a protocol, a mandatory, binding, enforceable protocol, requiring that before any person found with a lost child can be arrested, an officer must ask the child 3 questions in a calm setting. Did this person find you? Did this person hurt you? Did this person try to help you? He says, a 6-year-old boy could have answered all 3 of those questions in 30 seconds. He says, nobody asked him. He says, that is the thing I cannot move past. The answer was right there. It was 6 years old, and it was sitting on the curb, and it was holding my hand, and nobody asked it a single question. Caldwell files the lawsuit 4 weeks after the arrest. $9.4 million. Aiden Cole asks his mother, on the Saturday morning after the Friday night, whether the man who helped him is okay. Diana Cole tells him she is working on making sure he is. Aiden asks whether the man is in trouble. Diana says she is working on that too. Aiden is quiet for a moment. Then he says, he talked to me about dinosaurs. He says, he made me feel like the dinosaur was right there. He says, I want him to know I am okay. Diana contacts Caldwell's office that afternoon. She asks whether it would be appropriate for Aiden to communicate that to Dr. Webb. Caldwell asks Dr. Webb. Dr. Webb says yes. Diana writes a card on Aiden's behalf. Aiden draws a dinosaur on it, a specific dinosaur, the one he and Dr. Webb discussed on the curb, a Stegosaurus, rendered in green crayon with a precision that suggests Aiden has drawn this particular dinosaur before and considers it important to get right. Diana mails it to Dr. Webb's office address. Dr. Webb receives it on a Tuesday morning between client sessions. He reads the card. He looks at the Stegosaurus for a long time. He puts it in the frame beside his clinical license on the office wall. It is still there. He will testify at the civil trial that the card is the reason he chose to name the protocol after Aiden rather than after himself. He will say, Aiden did not know he was doing anything significant when he held my hand on that curb. He was doing the most natural thing available to him. He was holding on to the person who made him feel safe. He will say, the protocol is about making sure the next officer who arrives at a scene like that one looks at what the child is doing before he looks at anything else. He will say, what Aiden was doing was the whole story. Nobody read it. The body camera footage becomes Exhibit A. It begins recording before Doyle reaches the scene and captures, in the first 47 seconds of footage, everything the incident report will later mischaracterize. It shows Aiden calm and holding Dr. Webb's hand on arrival. It shows Doyle separating them. It shows Aiden beginning to cry at the moment of separation, not before. It shows Dr. Webb's hands visible throughout. It shows the consultant badge being examined for approximately 3 seconds and set aside. It shows Dr. Webb providing an immediate, specific, and coherent account of how he came to be on that curb with that child. It shows none of the distress in the subject's presence that the incident report describes, because the distress begins at the moment the subject is separated from the child, which is a clinically distinct and documentable phenomenon that the incident report either does not understand or deliberately mischaracterizes. The 911 call record becomes Exhibit B. Dr. Webb's call at 6:13 p.m. His voice, calm and precise, describing the child's location, condition, and age. His identification of himself as a licensed child psychologist, staying with the child until help arrives. The call placed 7 minutes before Doyle left the precinct. The call that makes the kidnapping theory not merely unlikely, but logistically impossible in the specific and documented way that a time-stamped public record makes things impossible. Dr. Webb's consultant contract with the Child Protection Unit becomes Exhibit C. 4 years of annual renewals, 47 child victim referrals, 11 expert witness appearances, 14 officer training sessions, his name and photograph on the department's own contracted consultant roster, accessible to any officer with a department login in 20 seconds. The contract that was in the property bag, in the jacket pocket, for 7 hours while the department that issued it held the man it was issued to in a holding cell 3 floors below the unit that employs him. Diana Cole's testimony becomes Exhibit D, 55 minutes on the stand on day 2 of the civil trial. Her arrival at 6:31 p.m., her statement to Doyle, his response. Her account of Aiden asking 4 times where the man went. Her account of writing the statement she delivered to the precinct desk at 9 p.m. Her account of sitting in the hospital waiting room with a child who had 3 stitches in his knee and a question nobody could answer. The jury finds her the most credible witness in the trial. They find her before Dr. Webb takes the stand. By the time he testifies, the jury has already decided what happened on Maple Street. The 2 prior complaints, Jerome Carter and David Osei, become Exhibit E. The pattern analyst retained by Caldwell reviews 28 months of Doyle's stop and arrest records. In incidents involving black individuals where an alternative explanation for the subject's presence was immediately available, Doyle's rate of proceeding to arrest without investigating the alternative explanation is 6.3 times higher than his rate in comparable incidents involving white individuals. The pattern is not ambiguous. It was not examined until it produced a $9.4 million lawsuit and a 6-year-old boy asking 4 times where the man went. Caldwell deposes Doyle 11 months after the arrest, over 6 hours. She asks him to describe the specific observation that led him to treat Dr. Webb as a suspect rather than as the person who called 911. He says the subject was found in close physical contact with the child. She asks whether close physical contact between a child and an adult at the scene of a reported child emergency is, in his training, more consistent with the presence of a threat or the presence of assistance. He says it depends on the circumstances. She places the body camera still image on the table, showing Aiden calm with his hand in Dr. Webb's. She asks what specific circumstance in that image is consistent with a threat rather than assistance. He does not answer. She asks whether he spoke to the child before making the arrest. He says he assessed the child's condition. She asks whether he asked the child any questions. He says the child was distressed. She asks whether the child was distressed before or after he separated the child from Dr. Webb. He says the child appeared distressed. She plays the first 47 seconds of body camera footage. She asks him to identify the moment at which the child appears distressed. He is quiet. She asks him again. He says the child was crying. She asks when the crying begins in the footage. He does not answer. She places the consultant contract on the table. She asks whether he examined the badge Dr. Webb directed him to. He says he looked at it. She asks how long he looked at it. He says briefly. She asks whether he recognized it as a city police department contractor credential. He says it was not immediately clear to him. She asks what would have made it clear. He does not answer. She places the 911 call record on the table. She asks him to read the timestamp. He reads it. She asks him to read the dispatch log showing his own departure from the precinct. He reads it. She asks him to explain how a man who kidnapped a child could have placed a 911 call about that child 7 minutes before the responding officer left the building. He is quiet for 19 seconds. He says he cannot speak to the timing. She says, "I know." She closes the folder. The civil jury deliberates for 2 days and 1 hour. $9.4 million. $3.6 million to Dr. Webb. $1.5 million for civil rights violations, wrongful arrest, and racial profiling. $1.2 million for the specific and documented harm of 7 hours in a holding cell with the evidence of his innocence in his jacket pocket. $900,000 in punitive damages against Doyle personally. $2.8 million in institutional damages, funding the development and statewide implementation of the Aiden Protocol. A mandatory 3-question sequence. Did this person find you? Did this person hurt you? Did this person try to help you? Required to be asked of any child at the scene before any Good Samaritan finder of that child can be arrested. Conducted in a calm setting by a trained officer, with the child's responses documented on body camera before any arrest is initiated. $3 million in punitive damages against the city for the 2 dismissed prior complaints, the absence of pattern review, and the specific institutional failure of a department that held its own contracted consultant in a holding cell for 7 hours without accessing the database that would have identified him in 20 seconds. Doyle is terminated. Jerome Carter and David Osei's prior complaints are reopened, found meritorious, and compensated. The criminal trial on charges of filing a false official report and deprivation of civil rights under color of law concludes 7 weeks after the civil verdict. The body camera footage placed beside the incident report requires, as in every case this series has documented, no interpretation beyond the simultaneous viewing. The jury deliberates for 18 hours, guilty on both counts. Doyle is sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The Aiden Protocol is implemented statewide within 10 months. It is presented at a National Child Protection Conference the following year and adopted in modified form by 31 states within 2 years. It is named in every state's implementation documentation after the 6-year-old boy who was calm and holding a stranger's hand when the officer arrived, and who asked 4 times where the man went when the officer took the stranger away. Aiden Cole is 7 years old when the civil verdict is read. He does not attend the trial. His mother does not bring him. She tells him, when he asks what happened with the man who helped him, that the man is okay, and that some very important people decided that what happened to him was wrong, and that they are going to make sure it does not happen to anyone else. Aiden asks whether the man got in trouble. Diana says no. Aiden asks whether the man who put him in trouble got in trouble. Diana says yes. Aiden thinks about this for a moment. Then he asks whether the man knows that he still has the Stegosaurus. Diana says she thinks he probably does. Dr. Webb is asked, at the National Child Protection Conference where the Aiden Protocol is formally presented, what he would say to a child who asked him why he stayed on that curb instead of walking past. He thinks for a moment. He says, I would tell him that staying was the only option that was available to me. He says, I do not mean that in a heroic way. I mean it in a practical way. A child was on the ground. I have spent 16 years learning what to do when a child is on the ground. He says, walking past was not a real option. It was never a real option. He pauses. He says, the 7 hours were real. He says, I would do it again. He says, the Stegosaurus is on my wall. He sits down. Jerome Carter is 48 years old. He filed his complaint against Doyle 2 years before November 14th. He was told it was under review and then told it had been dismissed. He did not know that a second man had described the same pattern 3 months later. He did not know that the combined weight of 2 complaints examined together would have produced the pattern finding that his complaint alone did not. He did not know that a child psychologist would have to spend 7 hours in a holding cell before anyone looked at the complaints together. He says when Caldwell's office contacts him, I want to know what the complaint process is for if it does not prevent the next one. He says, I filed because I thought filing mattered. He says, it mattered to the lawsuit. He says, I needed it to matter before the lawsuit. Caldwell does not have a satisfying answer. She tells him the Aiden Protocol exists in part because of what he filed. He says, I know. He says, I needed it to exist before Marcus Webb spent 7 hours in a holding cell. He says, that is the part I cannot make peace with. David Osei says something similar in different words. Both of them attend the criminal sentencing. Neither of them speaks to the press. They go home. $9.4 million, 3 years in federal prison, a statewide protocol in 31 states. 2 prior complainants compensated, a stegosaurus on an office wall. A 6-year-old's question answered, eventually, inadequately, 4 times before anyone thought to ask the 6-year-old a question back. And none of it gives back the 7 hours. None of it gives back the moment the handcuffs went on while Aiden Cole started crying on the curb behind him. None of it reaches the determination made in the first 3 seconds of a police officer's arrival at a scene. The determination that preceded every question that was not asked, every badge that was not examined, every database entry that was not pulled, every child who was not spoken to. The Aiden Protocol requires the 3 questions. The questions require a calm setting. The calm setting requires an officer who arrives at a scene involving a black man and a child and does not make the determination in the first 3 seconds. The protocol creates the procedural requirement. It does not create the disposition that makes the requirement feel necessary rather than bureaucratic. That disposition is built more slowly by consequences that accumulate until the cost of the 3-second determination is visible enough and permanent enough and expensive enough that the space between arrival and assumption becomes wide enough for 3 questions to fit inside it. 3 questions. Did this person find you? Did this person hurt you? Did this person try to help you? 30 seconds. Aiden Cole could have answered all 3 of them before Doyle finished reaching for his handcuffs. Nobody asked. The Aiden Protocol makes sure the next officer asks. It is named after a 6-year-old boy who held a stranger's hand on a curb and made the stranger feel, for the 20 minutes before the patrol vehicle arrived, that what he was doing was exactly right. Because it was. Because it always was. Because the 7 hours and the $9.4 million and the 3 years in federal prison are all, in the end, the consequence of one officer's failure to look at what a 6-year-old boy's hand was already telling him. Dr. Marcus Webb still walks home from work on Friday evenings. He still takes Maple Street. He passes the corner of Maple and 5th approximately once a week. The convenience store is still there. The curb is still there. He does not avoid it. He still stops when he sees a child who needs someone to stop. Dr. Marcus Webb is a licensed child psychologist and a contracted consultant to the City Police Department's Child Protection Unit. On the evening of November 14th, he found a 6-year-old boy alone and injured on a street corner. Called 911, used 16 years of professional training to keep the boy calm, and was holding the boy's hand when the officer arrived 9 minutes later. He was in handcuffs 4 minutes after that, in a holding cell for 7 hours. The boy's mother arrived 5 minutes after the arrest and told the officer directly that the man in handcuffs had found her son and saved him. The officer drove to the precinct. The consultant badge was in his jacket pocket the whole time. The department database would have identified him in 20 seconds. The 911 call timestamp made the kidnapping theory logistically impossible before the first question was asked. Aiden Cole asked 4 times where the man went. Nobody could tell him. Doyle was terminated, convicted, and sentenced to 3 years. The Aiden Protocol is in 31 states. Jerome Carter and David Osai were compensated. The Stegosaurus is on the wall. Dr. Webb still takes Maple Street on Friday evenings. So here is my question. If a 911 call placed before the officer left the precinct, a consultant badge from the arresting department's own child protection unit in the subject's jacket pocket, a 6-year-old boy, calm and holding the subject's hand at the moment of arrival, and the boy's mother at the scene 5 minutes after the arrest confirming everything. If none of that is enough to prevent a black man from spending 7 hours in a holding cell for saving a child, what is? Should officers who make arrests in the presence of immediately available exculpatory evidence they do not examine face automatic criminal referral rather than internal review, given that internal review has now demonstrably failed the same officer's subjects twice? And should the 3 questions of the Aiden Protocol be a criminal prerequisite for any arrest involving a found child, making any conviction obtained without documented compliance with the protocol automatically subject to dismissal? Share your thoughts in the comments. This story proves that calling 911 does not protect you, that a consultant badge from the arresting department does not protect you, that a child calm and holding your hand does not protect you, that a mother arriving 5 minutes after the arrest and saying you saved her son does not protect you. But 3 questions, 30 seconds, a 6-year-old boy on a curb who knew the answer to all of them before anyone thought to ask. That is what the protocol was built from. That is what 31 states now require before the handcuffs come out. Dr. Marcus Webb stayed on that curb because walking past was not a real option. The Aiden Protocol exists because asking 3 questions before making an arrest should never have been optional. It is not optional anymore. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next story.